So yes, thank you for having me here with you to share my perspective on a very personal and, as some of you probably know, controversial topic, and that is the topic of immigration. I will briefly share my story with you as an immigrant. I came to the U.S. nearly 40 years ago. I have lived most of those 40 years here in Southern Oregon, just a little over 30 years. I was 14 years old when my father and my older brother and I left El Salvador right at the beginning of a 12-year civil war that devastated the country and left just over 80,000 people dead and forced about 1.6 million Salvadorians to flee. About 1.5 million of us ended up here in the US, most of us undocumented. Another 100,000 ended up in Canada, Australia, and in Italy, where they were given political asylum. My father, brother, and I traveled through Mexico and Guatemala by train, bus, and oftentimes on foot. We spent, I recall, a few hours in cold December night crossing that desert and just outside of San Diego to eventually make it to the Tijuana border and finally cross the last immigration checkpoint with 3 of us and another refugee stuffed in the trunk of a car. Now, I'm a father, and I suspect most of you here have children too. And as you can imagine, no one wants to put their children in that kind of situation, risk, or to go through that kind of hardship, unless they feel that there's no alternative. For us, it was not a matter of choice. It was a matter of survival, as you can imagine. I was old enough to either get picked up by the military, and I did serve a couple of what they call civilian shifts. Every male 14 years or older had to do that every month, or to join the revolution movement. Now, many refugees arrive here without a place to go to. I was very fortunate that my oldest sister, Irma, had been living here in the US for about 3 years before we came. And she was courageous enough to go down to El Salvador, risk her life, and get us out of the war zone. And she, of course, when we arrived, provided that support for me to be able to learn English, go to school, and build a foundation to build my life here in the US. I tell people when I share my story that if it wasn't for her, I really don't believe that I would be here today. Like most immigrants, I came here with big dreams. I came here with a dream of getting an education, the dream of improving my life, and becoming a contributing member of society. My dreams were real and at times, I have to say, elusive as an undocumented immigrant, not knowing just where I stood, just where I would be, and just what kind of opportunities awaited for me. After high school, I attended a community college where I was told I could not continue because of my legal status. And yes, I was in the same situation that many young students or dreamers find themselves today. So it's something that I can completely relate to when we hear about our DACA dreamers today. And it amazes me that almost 40 years later, we still have young dreamers with the same ambitions and the same drive, facing the same challenges. I work nights to support myself and to pay for my books and tuition. I never asked for a dime in financial assistance or financial aid. I was paying for my own way, but I could not continue. And so, determined to succeed and to build a life, 7 years later, I came to Southern Oregon. That was in 1988, with $5,000 in the bank and the dream of building a career in real estate sales. And that is how I started my career in real estate, which has led to real estate investments, development, and construction. And today, I'm one of the partners at Ashland-based KDA Homes, where we build sustainable housing, mostly in Ashland. And we employed a number of, I would say, dozens of workers and subs and tradesmen, and do business with a lot of local businesses that I believe support our local economy. That said, I am very grateful to my sister and to our country and to this community, which has embraced me as one of its own. And I'm very proud to call myself a U.S. citizen and a member of this community. So why am I here? I'm a naturalized U.S. citizen. I have a business. I have stability. Why should I care about the issue of immigration? And in fact, this issue may not affect any of you directly. So why should you care? I care about this issue for the following reasons. I believe that this topic has mushroomed from a topic of undocumented immigration to an issue of division and race. And if we believe that division and racism should not be tolerated, then all of us in this room should care. And if we agree that immigrants, and to a large degree undocumented immigrants, are the backbone of the agriculture industry, and if we want our food to come from our own land, then I believe we too should all care. And if we believe that immigrants make a significant contribution to our economy by providing a very significant part of the labor in various industries such as hospitality, construction, agriculture, and manufacturing, then we should all care. I believe these are all good enough reasons for all of us to care about this issue. But I also care about this issue because the rhetoric I hear every day does not reflect my story or that of other immigrants. The suggestion that undocumented immigrants are murderers, rapists, drug dealers, don't pay taxes, are leeches of society is not a description that fits my story or that of others. I feel the dehumanizing and the criminalizing rhetoric of today is an attack on my own dignity and on my own humanity. Now, I want to clarify a couple points. I am not here to pick on any politician or to pick on any political party. I believe both parties and most politicians are responsible for the lack of action that has led to this point. I'm not here to advocate for open borders, nor am I here to advocate for undocumented immigration. If anything, I'm here to advocate against undocumented immigration. And I will tell you why in a few minutes. I am here to advocate for real immigration reform because our immigration system, as most of you probably know, is broken in more than one way. That said, I believe our immigration system is broken by design, not by coincidence. I believe that the current system is designed to exploit immigrants economically, socially, and politically. think I just lost the mic.
Let's just use that one.
Again, I believe that the current system is designed to exploit immigrants economically, socially, and politically. I compare this systemic problem to modern-day slavery. And by the way, I stole that term of modern-day slavery to apply to undocumented immigration from our own government. I don't know if many of you have had a chance to visit the men's room at the airport here in Medford, but you see these posters in there. I took a picture of this one. It's a bit ironic, isn't it? It says human trafficking in America is modern-day slavery. Undocumented immigrants are victims of human trafficking. Consider this. We have over 11 million tax-paying individuals lured to this country without rights, without representation, without vote, individuals who are criminalized, dehumanized, discriminated against, persecuted, incarcerated, separated from their families and their children here and abroad. Now, if this does not fit the description of modern-day slavery, what does? Meanwhile, our legislators keep exploiting the topic for political gain while asking the same wrong questions that produce the same wrong answers, all while ignoring the obvious. For instance, let's look at border security. We are spending over $5 billion on border security a year. There's a staff of roughly 20,000 people, an increase of over 500% since 2001, and growing every year. Most of that is spent on the southern border between the U.S. and Mexico. The average daily population of detained immigrants has gone from 7,000 in 1994 to 38,000 in 2017. Some estimate the daily cost per detainee at $200 per day. This equates to nearly $3 billion a year spent on for-profit detention centers. That's our money. This represents close to 60% of the annual budget spent on immigration enforcement, paying for detention centers that are profiting, locking people up. Do you think those for-profit detention centers have an interest in solving the immigration issue? Today we have a national emergency that calls for an additional $8 billion to construct a wall that is supposed to stop undocumented immigration. Friends, the flow of undocumented immigration is not the result of poor border security. It is the result of demand on this side of the border for undocumented workers. And as long as there is demand, undocumented immigrants will keep coming, regardless of wall or the billions we spend on border security or incarceration. As long as we lure people with illegal employment, they will come. So my question is, would it make more sense to address the issue and not just react to the symptoms? Because I believe that's what we are doing today. We're reacting to the symptoms of the problem. What do I mean by that? Well, imagine that you have a toothache and you go see your dentist. And all he does is give you a bottle of aspirin and sends you home. Or let's say that he injects a local anesthetic, charges you $1,000, and sends you home. Now, he could have treated the root of the problem, the cavity, for probably $500. I don't know if that paints a picture, but it sure does in my mind about how we are addressing this issue. I find it a little ridiculous, to say the least. Well, I believe this is how we are dealing with undocumented immigration today. We are treating the symptoms for much more than the cost to treat the problem. We have a national electronic verification system known as E-Verify. I'm sure many of you have heard about it. E-Verify was designed for employers to check legal status of the people they hire. I think this is a genius solution for tackling the issue of undocumented immigration. So what's the problem? Well, the problem is that employers are not required to use it. The law does not require employers to E-Verify. In other words, our federal government talks about ending undocumented immigration while they leave the door open to continue luring undocumented workers with illegal employment. And that's the reality of the issue. Wouldn't it make more sense to have tough enforcement of E-Verify? Why is this not being done? Why is this not at the top of the conversation? Why are undocumented workers criminalized while employers are not held accountable? Sadly, I don't believe this will change until we the people, the voters, demand reforms. We are the government. It's up to us, the public, the voters, to demand common sense legislation that addresses the problem. It's time we ask the right questions that lead to the right answers. And we, the voters, are the government, and it's time we demand a common sense approach that works. So you're probably asking yourself by now, so what solutions am I proposing? That's typically the question that I get. And I wish I had a solution that would fix this issue once and for all. And I can't say that I do. But perhaps a good starting point is legislation that requires tough enforcement of E-Verify in tandem with a guest worker program that meets the needs of our economy, similar to the Bracero program of the 1950s. This will allow vetted workers to legally enter for a season or two and return to their families with their hard-earned dollars that they can invest in their communities and promote economic sustainability in their communities. The fact is that most undocumented immigrants come looking for economic opportunity, not a place to settle in. That's a fact. Most undocumented immigrants would be thrilled to have the opportunity to work seasonally and return to their families and their communities. I understand this is not a perfect solution, and it won't fix all the issues, but I believe it's a far better approach than our current system. So I urge you to ask our legislators to bring these questions to the table. I urge you to ask our legislators why they continue pouring billions of dollars into the symptoms and not the root of the problem. In conclusion, I will leave you with an analogy I call the honey jar. If you leave an open jar of honey on your kitchen table, it's likely to attract a caravan of ants. Now, you can build a wall around that jar of honey, and you can even send an entire army to guard it. You can even incarcerate them, their children. But as long as the jar of honey is left open, caravans of ants will keep coming. Thank you.